Alright, hi guys. So, I wanted to do a little sit down video. I've been trying to figure out kind of what content I want to put out there, and as I navigate that, I don't know, I always tend to go back to this topic because it's kind of my life, but I wanted to talk about singleness, singlehood, just the state of being single. I kind of have a little list. I wanted to make this video immediately, so forgive me if my thoughts aren't completely collected, but I have a little bit of an order of things. The first section is how long have I been single? So I have been single from the womb to this moment right here. Yeah, I've been single all my life. I've obviously had like crushes, multiple crushes, and things like that, and those feelings reciprocated, but they've never grown into a full-fledged relationship. So I have been single, I guess you could say, for 24 years. Why? Now we're gonna move into why I've been single. These first few sections are kind of short because it's pretty direct, but before I get into this section of why I've been single, I want to actually do a little plug for one of my blog posts that I actually already made about this, called Single State of Mind, Why I've Been Single. I'm gonna put it up on the screen. I think it's a fun read if you guys want to check it out. It kind of just goes into why I've been single in a kind of lighthearted way. I'm gonna be brushing up on the same topics that I talked about in that blog, but just going a little bit more into my perceptions and like kind of my childhood and stuff like that. But plain and simple, why I've been single is that there's been no reciprocation of feelings. There's just been no time in my life when I've liked someone and they've liked me, and together we have decided to embark on a relationship. That just never happened. Yeah, I don't know much more of, I mean, I don't know if I have the capability to think of any other reason why I've been single. I'm interjecting to say another reason why I am probably single is because of how unstable, not like me as a person, well, I mean low-key, but how unstable I have been in my living arrangements. Let me get a timeline. Hold on. Let me see. I moved to Virginia in August of 2020, and then for all the way from August of 2020 to May of 2021, I was in Virginia, and then May 2021 I was in Seattle, and then May 2022, no. Yeah, May 2021 to May 2022, I was in Seattle, and then come May 2022 to this moment right now, I've been in Sac. So I've been like hopping around a lot. Even in high school, I went to my high school here in Sacramento for my freshman year, and then my sophomore year I moved to Pennsylvania, and then I came back my sophomore year and finished up all those years in high school here, and in college I went back and forth as well. So that's probably a contributing factor as to why I am single. I don't stay in a location long enough to build enough lasting relationships, I think, to that like will lead to like a relationship. That's what I think. I don't know for sure, but it could be a factor. But it's tiring to just be jumping around, and it's kind of sad because like I start to forget which people I met where. Like I remember the people, but I'm like, oh, did I meet them here or did I meet them there? Because like they all just start to merge into like this big category of amazing people I've met, and I'm just like, yeah. But yeah, okay, resume. Like, I'm not sure. I really don't feel like there's a reason, like poor character or anything like that that is a contributing factor as to why I've been single all these years. I I don't know. So let's go on to the next topic, which is society's perception of singleness. Personally, I think people don't always regard singleness as positive. Honestly, it wasn't until I started seeing like single TikTok, that I've really started to feel validated in being single for this long, because it just seems like overall, like, people want to have those experiences early in life. Like, people often say, oh yeah, I lost my virginity at like 13 or like 14. Like, it's so well accepted to have lost your virginity like the earlier the age. And obviously that's different for men and women. Like, for women, we are regarded a lot differently from a man who has lost their virginity early on. So that's another part that plays into it. But I don't know, I feel like when a woman says that they've been single for this long, like, the go-to thing is like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like, that's what society thinks is like, oh, there's something wrong then. But like, I feel as though if a man were to be like, oh yeah, I've been single all this long, like, people would regard that more as a choice. Like, oh, like, yeah, bro, like, you chose that or something like that. It definitely feels more stigmatized towards women, at least as I've seen on TikTok. It's a lot more women who like kind of have been banding together and just talking about their experiences. So it just feels as though society just kind of values more of like those traditional milestones that people are supposed to have in their life, of like their first kiss, their first relationship. It just seems as though there's already this like invisible timeline of like, oh yeah, that happened in middle school and high school and blah blah blah. Like, there's just this normalized way of having a relationship or being in love or just love in general, that not everybody falls in line with. Like, not everybody has those experiences as a child, and I don't think enough people talk about it because they kind of think that because of those experiences that they are somehow different or something's wrong, or at least that's kind of how I felt. So we're just gonna slide into the category of my perception of singleness as a child. Yeah, I remember throughout elementary school, middle school, and high school feeling very confused and just kind of, I was excited about the idea of having a crush and having a boyfriend, and honestly, you could probably say I was boy crazy. Like, starting out in elementary school, I had, as you'll read in my blog, I had a crush, and it did not manifest into what I wanted it to be, and that was kind of hard because obviously in elementary school is when you start off with those little cliques, and like, there was this big girl clique that everybody wanted to be in, and like, sometimes I was in, sometimes I was out, and that's kind of, it's an interesting dynamic to be introduced to as a kid, as to like, okay, this guy likes her, she's like the queen of the group, like, this is what like all guys want. Like, if this is what he wants and other people want, then like, and it's not what I am, then like, it gives you this idea that like, I have to be that in order to get not only like the guy that I like, but a guy in general. So yeah, it really was the first time when I started realizing that like, there was that possibility that like, someone might not like you. Like, that was where that's first introduced. Middle school came around, and of course I had a bunch of crushes. Yeah, a bunch of crushes, and it was very interesting. I don't think I really pursued those crushes. I definitely don't remember pursuing those crushes. I do remember being single. I don't know if I took being single as hard. No, I definitely did. I had a really hardcore crush, and I took that pretty hard when those feelings weren't reciprocated. Because the thing for me is, if I have a crush, like, I don't feel like it's fairly not, like, I don't think I'm conspicuous about it. Like, I do things for that crush. Like, I will do things. So I feel as though it was a fairly obvious crush. In high school, I think high school was really the time when I started to feel like, okay, like, what is going on? Like, it was the beginning of like, okay, like, people are telling me about their like middle school relationships, and high school was really the time where I had crushes, like hardcore crushes that I actually sometimes did act on, because I felt like everybody around me was having relationships. Like, I need to act like I need to have this milestone in my life in order to be like normal, quote unquote, or to be able to relate to the people in my class and to my friends. I thought that was like kind of the standard. And of course, you always get the like, oh, it'll happen when it happens. Like, it's not your time yet. Like, like, I still to this day get it'll happen when it'll happen. I don't think I ever jeopardized my own sense of self. I think I always stayed very true to myself, and I just kind of hoped that people would like me for me. But I don't think I ever changed who I was to try and gain favor. But that was definitely the time when I was really trying to like step out of that single status. I remember once there was a dance, and one of the girls who was close to a guy that I kind of had a crush on was like, hey, like, I'm gonna talk to so-and-so and see if he'll go to the dance with you. And like, I remember being so excited for the prospect of that, and it was just like, okay, yeah. And things like that. Or like, I had a crush and he liked someone else, but like, I would help him get that girl even though the girl didn't like him, and like in hopes of like me being close to him, maybe he would realize that he liked me. Like, that was kind of how I was in high school. Like, stay close to the guys you like because maybe they will like you once they get to know you. Like, obviously that did not happen, so it just kind of was like, it was definitely a struggle. I think in all of my friend groups I was really like not only the one that hadn't been in a relationship, but was the one that like no one really had crushes for me and stuff like that. So it was definitely hard to relate to my friends in ways like that. It was something I was always just conscious of. Like, whenever I would meet up with friends like a little bit later, kind of moving a little bit more towards my adult life, they'd be like, okay, so what's new? Like, do you have a boyfriend? And I'd be like, nope, nothing new. Like, there would always be new developments in their lives. Like, oh, they had a hoe season. And it was like, yeah, no, I'm still over here. So I remember just feeling like I couldn't even talk about it also. Like, I felt like the fact that I had not had sex or did much of anything was just kind of like, oh, you haven't had sex, like, what's wrong with you? Like, that's just the stigma that you feel from, like, society and, like, movies in general, like, teen movies where life is happening so quickly for them. It's like you expect, this goes back a little bit to society, but, like, you kind of expect your life to unfold, like, the shows and the movies that you've been watching, or, like the people who are around you. Like, you expect that you'll be in line with all of that, and I didn't expect that I wouldn't, and I thought that that was not scary, but just like, I thought it would be like unaccepted. But yeah, so now that brings me to my perception of singleness today. Honestly, you can literally ask my sister and my friends. My perception of my single status changes like month after month. Obviously, you've been meeting these people all these years, and you've been having all these crushes, and if they don't like you, then you start to wonder, like, well, what part of me do they not like? Like, you obviously don't want to ask that question and hear whatever answer it is, but it's a question that I'm sure comes up in the minds of people who have been single for as long as I have, or if not more. Like, the question always appears is like, what is the reason why, like, I couldn't achieve this or I couldn't do this? And it's like, I don't know if I ever, as a kid, looked at a relationship as like me forming a relationship with someone and it becoming something beautiful and something lifelong and something extravagant. Like, obviously I had fantasized about it. I feel like the term hopeless romantic was basically my theme of, if you could tell me, theme of my life, hopeless romantic. I think I had always wanted it because I had seen it, and I wanted that experience and that love, but I don't think I understood that our relationship is supposed to add to your life. It's supposed to enhance what's already there. Like, in the fact that I was kind of relying on a relationship to kind of tie a bow on my life or say, okay, like, you're good, check, life's complete, like, you're good to be happy. Like, from my perception of it now as an adult, I can say that I want a relationship to add to my life. I want a relationship with someone because I want us both to kind of grow in that relationship, and I want to kind of have that person that is your best friend but is something more and knows you a little bit more intimately than anyone else. And like, but I want to have that because I feel my life at this point, I want it. I don't want to, I think before I felt like I needed it. I felt like it was a necessity, and I think that when you need it, then it's not right. Because as a kid and even as a teen, like, I was craving it. Like, I felt so limited by the fact that I had no experience and no relationship. I felt as though I was at a loss or I was at a disadvantage in life. And people don't seem to talk about the advantages of being single this long. Like, I have this view that no one has. Like, for the people, just as the people who've been in a relationship, they have a view, they have an expansion on life that I don't have. But I also know there's value in what I've experienced not being in a relationship, and I don't think people talk about that enough. I've run into a lot of circumstances where people say, like, oh, you wouldn't understand, like, you've never been in a relationship. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense, because at the end of the day, I have relationships with people. I have friendships and family relationships that, although aren't sexually intimate as a, like, romantic relationship is, they are still a relationship that requires vulnerability and trust and all of those components that make a good romantic relationship good. So it's like when people say, oh, you wouldn't understand, it's like, well, to an extent I do. Like, I give my all in my friendships and my family relationships because I don't have my all to give to a romantic partner. So I give it all to the people who are in my life. So when they hurt me, I can imagine how it must feel for your romantic partner to hurt you, because I've invested my whole heart and in my relationship, so I know what that pain feels like, the betrayal of a friend. Like, I can imagine the betrayal of someone else. Like, I'm not, like, again, I don't know specifically what that feels like in a relationship, being broken up and all that, but I can empathize and I can understand more than people think. Because I put so much into my friendships, and I know it feels like that's probably how it is for other people who have been single like this. They put so much of themselves into their friendships and their family relationships because that's what you have to give, and I love that I do that. It's very frustrating when people try and tell me what they don't think I understand, and it annoys me that people think they have some sort of a leg up on you intellectually because they've been in a relationship, because you don't see me running around saying, like, oh, like, I know more than you, like, I've been seeing all this time. Like, there's no argument on that side. There's always like oh, like, I'm more mature or I've grown more because I've been in a relationship. And like, even on TikTok, like on YouTube, you watch these shows of like the blind dates, like on Jubilee and Cut, and like often, like, I remember seeing videos where, like, the man would ask, like, oh, like, how long of a relationship have you been in? Like, you need to have been in a relationship for, like, this long. And, like, all the people who've, like, never been in a relationship or only had, like, a short-term relationship, like, gets up and go because somehow it's a requirement that you have to have this level to be able to be in a relationship with someone. And it's just, like, it's just, I don't feel like society sees the value of being with yourself for that long. Like, being with me and me alone for 24 years, I feel as though I'm very self-aware. Well, I like to say that. I mean, I think I'm self-aware, but I don't always act in the way I know that I should. So, I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot that I've learned by being single. I don't know. I studied communication. Relationships are something that fascinate me. That's kind of why I became a communication major, was because I was very fascinated by kind of just language and how what we say and like can influence someone else. And like, I was very fascinated with conflict because I felt like I had a lot of like friendship conflict growing up. So I'm still fascinated by conflict. I think it's really important that segue. Sorry, this is something I'm like really passionate about that I don't get to talk about that much, but I think it's really important that we teach youth the importance of conflict resolution, because I feel like if we teach them at a younger age, then they will be able to communicate more effectively and empathetically when they get to my age. Because I always used to see conflict as like a end all for relationships and for anything, but I think if we look at conflict more as like a stepping stone or a bridge to something that's even stronger, that it's a healthier way to think about communication and of course conflict. And I think it would help us in more of these world problems if we had just a better basis of communication that would open us to more empathy, because I just feel like that's kind of what's lacking. But to segue back into what I'm saying, yeah, so that's kind of my perception of singleness right now. Part of me still kind of wants it just to like experience it, but I've thought about like, okay, what if I never did like get into a relationship? Like, what would that look like? I think about that often. Like, if I don't experience these things that I've always wanted, my fairy tale thing that I always thought about, like, what would that be? Like, would I be happy? I don't know. It's still, like I said, it's a question that I throw around every other day. Like, would I be happy? And I honestly feel I'm an introvert and I really like my alone time. Like, having my own studio was honestly a dream. Like, having a space that was completely mine, curated by me, a place that I could just melt into and take on that. I really value that. So it's a little hard for me to imagine it after all these years, but I do invite it because I do think it is a special experience to give part of yourself like that to someone in a unique way. And it is something I would like to experience, but I don't want the value of my life to be based off of whether or not I meet the one or something like that. Like, I really, really don't, which is why I battle with myself, because I'm like, I kind of want to fight the power and be like, I'm so happy, blah, 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 because of the fact that I'm single. But I don't want to look at it as like a war. But I do feel good about where I am right now. I feel empowered by the fact that every decision I make, it just impacts me, and like I can make whatever decision I want around me. Like, selfishly, like, I like the fact that I can do whatever I want. Yeah, it's a toss-up. It's interesting, but yeah, even to this day, everybody just tells me like, oh, like, it'll happen, like, you never know, like, blah, 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 and I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. Hopefully that answered the category. I know that was all over the place, but it's something I really want to talk about, because I feel like I don't talk about it because I was ashamed. I would never tell, like, whenever I'd meet new coworkers and stuff like that, like, I would tiptoe around it because I didn't want to feel like something was wrong with me because of my lack of experience. So yeah, I was very, like, kind of ashamed to talk about it, and to say, like, oh yeah, I was a virgin. Like, that was something that I really was shameful of. But yeah, now I'm just kind of like, who cares? Like, at the end of the day, the value of my life is going to be determined by me, and when I leave this earth, I'm the one who decides whether or not I was happy. And I don't really care if someone else kind of, what their 2 cents are about it. But yeah, it took a while for me to get to this point, and like I said, every day it kind of goes up in a cloud, but yeah, that's the video. I wanted to sit down and talk about it, and add to that discussion. Yeah, nothing has to be wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. It's just something that happens. Like, everybody, there's so many people in this world, and for me it was hard to grasp that some people's experiences might not fall in line with the norm, and that's okay. The norm is an absurd standard that no one should have to consider, and it's just unrealistic, but yet we still hold it subconsciously. because it's what we've been screened over and over and over again. At the end of the day, I don't feel as though I'm at a disadvantage in life because of this status. And more, I just feel like I'm learning a lot about myself, and I'm really happy for that, because I still think I have a lot to learn. But yeah, so that is it. Yep, single. Lastly, I always felt like I needed to have a crush, like I needed to have a fantasy to like pour myself into, and now I'm just trying to pour myself into like the fantasy of my own life. Yeah, I'm talking a lot, so yep, bye.